Hello and good morning, dear students. My name is Dr. Shuaib Mohammad Bhat. I am working as Assistant Professor in the Department of English at Institute of Aeronautical Engineering, Hyderabad. Today in this video lecture, we shall be discussing about significance of listening skills. So, in the previous lecture, we talked about other skills, we talked about speaking, and now we are going to discuss about listening skill. And we are done with the listening itself. In this lecture, we shall be talking about significance of listening skills. Before we directly jump to the listening skill, this significance of listening skill, let us first try to understand what listening is. What is listening? And what is the role of listening skill? I would like to quote Lee Iacocca. Lee Iacocca is the automobile executive who is best known for the development of Ford Mustang. So, what Lee says, let's see what Lee says. He says, I only wish I could find an institute that teaches people how to listen. I only wish I could find an institute that teaches people how to listen. So, Lee, this automobile executive of America, he feels that people do not have the patience for listening. People do not have that expertise in listening. People are not effective listeners. Everybody tries to be the speaker. Everybody tries to be the orator. Everybody tries to speak all the time. So this Lee, he says, I only wish I could find an institute that teaches people how to listen. Business people need to listen at least as much as they need to talk. There is a false impression about listening or about these language skills. That is, we should be more proficient with the speaking rather than listening or reading and writing. And this is totally wrong. A person cannot do justice with the language which he or she speaks if a person is not good at all the four skills. So reading is also important. To read a language, you can communicate with the help of written communication. To write, that's also important. It's not only important you are a good speaker, you have good you have a good voice, or you know the intonation, you know vocalics better. So that only is not required, or that only cannot make you a good speaker. Rather, all the four skills need to be taken on board equally. So there is this fallacy about listening that those who are good at speaking, they require or they need to give less attention to the listening. Those who are good at speaking, they can give less attention, less concentration or attention to the listening. No, it's wrong. So that's what Lee says. He says, because people need to listen at least as much as they need to talk. So the need for both listening and talking is equal. It's not like the need for speaking is more and need for listening is less. No, that's not the case. The need for both the skills is equal. Too many people fail to realize that real communication goes in both directions. Again, one more misinterpretation. Again, one more misconception about listening is this. Many people are there who have this idea or who have this propensity that communication is a one-way transport, where we need an active speaker, where we need a knowledgeable speaker, where we need a speaker who knows the art of speaking. So it is not only that thing. If we have a good speaker, a knowledgeable speaker, a speaker who has the art of speaking, that's good. But at the same time, we need active listeners. We need smart listeners. We need the people who listen us carefully. We need the people who have the skill of listening. Because every communication is incomplete if it is not understood by the target audience, by the listener. What's communication? Communication is not only sharing of information. Communication is sharing of information plus to be understood by the audience, by the listeners. Communication is to speak and to be understood and understand. So there are three elements, three steps are there. One is to speak, to convey by your verbal communication or by non-verbal, by oral communication, by written communication or by your body language to convey the message. Second is to be understood. If you are not understood by the listeners, that is a faulty communication. Okay, the second step. Third step is to understand. A speaker has to understand his or her audience. The speakers have to understand their audience. If a speaker cannot understand the audience, then again it is a faulty communication. Then that means your listeners, they may go with a lot of confusions in their mind regarding the discussion which you are sharing with them. So this is a misconception about listening, about communication, that it is one way only. No, it goes in both directions. We need two parties and both the parties must be active. So listening is not something which comes to us by its own, or it's not a skill which needs less prominence. No, when we talk about listening, speaking is incomplete without listening. When we do not have listeners, to whom will we speak? So for speaking, the foundation, the base is listening. Then I would like to quote the definition by International Listening Association, which was established in 1979. Let's see what International Listening Association talks about listening. It says, listening is the process of receiving, constructing meaning from, and responding to the spoken and non-verbal messages. The whole thing which Lee has spoken in the previous slide, which I showed to you, that again has been taken on board by International Listening Association. International Listening Association, it also talks about only those points. So the first thing is to receive. When a speaker speaks to listeners, listeners first receive the information. So it is to convey the information. When I convey, you receive it. The second thing is construct meaning from. That is to be understood. When you listen me, you construct meanings from it. That means you are understanding me. The third thing is, and responding to the spoken or non-verbal messages. Then you are responding to me, to my communication. And when you respond me, that means I understand you. I try to understand you. So communication, as I told you, it is a three-step process. One is to convey information. Second is to be understood. Third is to understand. This is what listening definition is by International Listening Association. International Listening Association says listening means to receive information, to construct a meaning from the information, and then respond to that communication. Because this responding is important. If you remember, we talked about communication process. There I talked about feedback. So every communication becomes complete with the help of feedback. With the help of feedback, you let your speaker know whether he or she was successful with the communication or not. And your speaker gets to know whether you have understood him or not by the feedback which you provide him or her at the end of every communication. So this responding is compulsory. It should not seem something stranger to you. What is this responding? We know communication is to speak and to listen. That only is communication. Where from this responding came? No. Communication is not only to speak and listen. Communication is to speak, to listen, and to respond. By giving the response, We are completing the information. We are completing the communication. And sometimes we want further clarifications. So by giving feedback, we continue the communication. We prolong the communication until we get satisfied regarding the talk which we are discussing. Then I would like to quote this American poet. Her name is Alice Duer Miller. Alice Miller. She's an American poet. Let's talk about Alice, what Alice said about listening. Listen means taking a vigorous human interest in what is being told us. Listening means taking a vigorous human interest. It means to give more human interest in what is being told us. It means to give more attention what is being said to us. How can we give more attention? When we try to understand that, when we ask for further clarifications, when we let our speaker know was he successful in the communication or not. This is how a communication process ends, and this is how listening can make our communication successful or effective. Okay, now let's conclude now the listening. Listening is a process of receiving, which I told you, interpreting, and reacting to the messages received from the communication sender. So better now listening, it is a process. We come to know with the help of these definitions that listening is a process where we receive information, then we interpret the information, and then we react to the message with the help of feedback which we receive from the sender. Means the message which we receive from the sender, we provide feedback. So it involves identifying the sounds of speech and processing them into words and sentences. If we see the physical outlook of listening, it is to understand, to identify sounds. See, but every language is made up of sounds. You will see in every alphabet there are letters. Like in English alphabet, there are 26 letters. So in other alphabets of other languages, there are this letter count. It varies from one language to another language. So we sometimes feel languages are made up of these alphabets. No, that's wrong. Or languages are made up of these letters. By alphabets, I mean the alphabet of different languages. I don't mean letters. Sometimes we feel that language is made up of letters. That's wrong. Every language is made up of sounds, but these sounds, they are represented by the letters. We represent different sounds by letters. If I talk about English, we have 44 sounds, out of which 24 sounds are consonants and 20 sounds are vowels. And now there may be a misconception. You may be asking me, sir, we have heard that A, E, I, O, U are vowels. Actually, these are the letters which represent these vowel sounds in English. When they contain the sound like A, E, I, O, these sounds, when these letters, they represent these sounds, so they are called vowel letters. So actually these 5 letters, they represent 20 sounds. That's why we have been taught by our teachers in our primary classes that there are 5 vowels. There are 5 letters in English alphabet which represent 20 vowels. So now this is not the topic like of these sound system, but I mean here to make you understand how this listening deals with the sounds, what relationship listening is having with the sounds. So listening, it involves identifying sounds, means identifying words, sentences, because we speak words and sentences with the help of sounds. So listening is to identify them and process these sounds into words and meanings. When we listen sounds, we process them. Okay, this is a word which is apple. It means a fruit which is red in color. It is delicious in taste. It's good for health. So we process its meaning. Then when a speaker speaks like, this is an apple, then you come to know, yeah, it has a structure. It's a sentence. So by listening, we process these things in words and sentences. Listening is an active, purposeful process of making sense of what we hear. Listening is not passive, it's active. It's purposeful process of making sense what we hear. It is a purposeful process of making sense of that all which we hear. So it's not passive, it's a purposeful process. And when we talk about language skills, listening is not only this, listening is a language skill. And it is the first skill. You just see God has given us 2 ears and only one mouth. So it shows the preference of ears. It means listening is playing more role than speaking. Obviously, as I told you, speaking is incomplete without listening. When we don't have listeners, what is the use of speaking? Speaking is only valid. Speaking can only be entertained. Speaking can only happen when we have listeners. Without listeners, speaking doesn't have any base. So listening, it comes first. When it comes to 4 language skills, we require 4 language skills in order to learn a language. First is listening. Second is better speaking. Third is reading. Fourth is writing. Listening comes first. The first and foremost communication skill that we learn in our lives is listening. In our life, everybody among us, the first skill which we learn, that is listening. When we were small children, or I would like to give you an example like this. Any small child gets birth in a family where the mother tongue is Telugu, or it is Hindi, or it is Urdu. Tell me which Urdu speaker, which Telugu speaker or Hindi professor goes to that family and teach that small born child the language. No, yes, obviously no one goes there. Then how does that small child learn the language? By listening. Because it's rightly said by someone, language is caught but not taught. Language can be caught. We catch words. So it is listening, which we already have. It's inherent in us. And the first skill which we learn during our childhood is listening only. So listening comes first. It is first and foremost a communication skill which we learn. Now, what can listening offer you? Effective listening makes us better students. If you are effective listeners in the class, you will be better students. Your concepts will be clear. You will be able to retain information for future references. There are chances you will get good grades in your exams. You will get academic success if you are good at listening. Effective listening makes our interpersonal relationship better. It makes our interpersonal relationship better. A relationship which we are sharing with other people, with our friends, with our family members, with the people with whom we live in a society. So it is listening which enables, which strengthens our interpersonal relationship. Interpersonal relationship means relationship with the people within a society. When we listen to people, we develop a relationship. When we listen to people, we develop a bond with them. So listening is important. Effective listening can make you a better public speaker. Effective listening will make you a better public speaker. See, this claim is a little bit ironical. It seems as if it is some paradox because it seems like as if it is a contradictory statement. Had it been like speaking makes us a better speaker, that you can easily digest. But it is something which is against that. Effective listening makes us a better speaker. Yes, this is true. When we listen to people, we get more information. When we listen to people, we get more knowledge. When we listen to people, we become aware of our weak zones and strong zones. Because we see how people are speaking in front of us. When we speak to people, we do not only get information, we do not only get knowledge, we are not only becoming aware of our strong and these weak zones. Rather, we get to know how to use non-verbal language, how to use our body language, how to use body postures, how to use body gestures. So this only can be given to you when you are effective listeners. And when you achieve this, obviously your speaking may be better, may be effective. You may be a good speaker. You may be a public speaker. Then it builds trust and encourages problem solving. It builds trust when you listen to your boss, when you listen to your friends, colleagues, your parents. So they build a trust with you because you are a person who give your ear to them, and it encourages problem solving. When you listen to people, there are chances you may encourage lot of problems of people. For example, I'm not able, I don't know how to generate how to start a program. So if you listen to me, that means you can provide me some help. Or if I am a listener, I will get a lot of things, lot of stuff that will help me to solve my own problems. So listening is important. And this listening, it reminds me of the greatest writers of English literature, Shakespeare. Shakespeare wrote a play by the name Hamlet. And in Hamlet, there is a character by the name Polonius. One of the famous characters drawn by Shakespeare, Polonius. Polonius, his son Laertes, he is going to France because in 16th century, the fashion of France was very famous. France was famous for knowledge because Renaissance was there. It was considered as the cradle of knowledge, development, science was flourishing. So every Englishman, great Englishmen, they were running to France in order to acquire more knowledge, not to visit places, not to eat food, not to get an entertainment there, but to get some knowledge. So these Englishmen, they went there. So Shakespeare has portrayed that in one of his plays, Hamlet, with the help of character Polonius. Polonius advises his son. He says, you go to France. It's shame for you to be here in England. And then he gives him some advices, some precepts. He says, here are some precepts which I share with you. And out of all those precepts, there is one. Give thy ear to everybody. Few thy voice. What does this mean, give thy ear to everybody? It means listen to everybody, but few thy voice, but speak to few people. It means don't be a talkative person. Rather be a listener, be a better listener. And this is rightly said. It's better to be a good listener than the best speaker. Because good listening can make you more better than the best speaker. Then, good listening enables people to tell their story. When you are a good listener, people will share their ideas with you, their stories with you. Now, it's not for this purpose you will get stories to entertain yourself. Every story may have a good message for you, good experience for you. So it is better to listen. There is a misconception about listening and hearing. Hearing and listening, they both are completely different. These are two different things. So hearing and listening is not one and the same. They are different. Hearing is the first step of listening. See, hearing is hearing is a physiological process in which vibrations are detected by the ear and then converted into nerve impulses and sent to brain. It is a physiological process. There is nothing to interpret the meaning, to construct a meaning with the process of hearing. Hearing means simply to receive the noise, and the noise it reaches to our eardrum. Then it is converted into nerve impulses and then it is sent to the brain. So this is the function of hearing. See, you are going to the market, a lot of noise is coming to your ears, noise of buses, some street vendors are shouting, some shopkeepers are doing their business, and there are people who are passing by, they are talking. So all this noise comes to your ear, but you are not constructing meaning to this noise. You are not paying attention to it because it's not deliberate. It's not voluntary. It's involuntarily. It's an involuntary act. So this is hearing. The noise which reaches to your ears, you are not paying attention. You are not taking it. This noise is not voluntary noise which you want to receive. So this is hearing. Hearing is the first step to listening. When we listen people, the first step is hearing. Because the first step is to receive the noise. That is hearing. And it is an involuntary act where we simply receive sounds. As I told you, it's an involuntary act. We receive sounds. Sounds may reach to our ears because this is the function of ears to receive sound. Then listening. Listening is the act of hearing a sound. It's an act to hear a sound first and understand what you hear. Then you understand. Then you evaluate it in the mind. Then you construct a meaning. Then you give it some concentration, some attention. So that's why I told you listening is voluntary. Because you are using these sounds, you take these sounds into your brain, there you convert them into meanings. Then it requires concentration so that your brain processes meaning from the words and sentences. When we give some concentration to the sounds, then our brain extracts meaning or deduces meaning from the given sounds, from the heard sounds. It's a voluntary act and it leads to learning. When we listen, we lead to learn. So listening leads us to learning. This is important to note here. Listening leads us to learning. There are some keys to effective listening. How can we make our listening effective? A dozen of tips are here for effective listening. One is maintain eye contact with the speaker if possible. It's better to maintain an eye contact with the speaker so that we cannot miss any point and skip any important point. Pay attention and listen for ideas. We should pay attention when we listen. We should pay attention to the ideas. And we should listen ideas. Find areas of interest. When we are listening, it is better to find the area of interest. Because by finding the area of interest, we will be paying more attention to the dialogue. Then, judge content, not delivery. We should judge the content, but not the mode of delivery. Sometimes the mode of delivery may not be good, may not be according to your expectations, but it's better to judge the content because what you need more, that's content. Then, don't interrupt and be patient. When you are listening to people, it's always better not to interrupt but to listen. We should not interrupt the speaker, we should listen carefully. Hold back your points or counterpoints. It's better to hold back your points and counterpoints. Once the speaker is done, then you can ask. Because when we wait for the speaker to finish his dialogue, there are chances he may be trying to solve all our confusions. So it's always better to wait till end for asking your counterpoints. Resist distractions. If there is any distraction, there is any obstacle, there is any barrier, it's better to resist them. Because you need to stay focused when you are listening to someone. Pay attention to non-verbal information. Listening does not only mean to use your ears to listen the information. It also means to pay attention to the non-verbal means of communication. Because sometimes we teach or we give more information with the help of non-verbal signs. Keep your mind open and be flexible. We should listen without any bias, without any grudge, without any indifference, so that we can understand everything and we should be flexible. Ask questions during pauses and give feedback. If there is any pause in between the talk, it's better to ask your questions during those pauses. And at the end, your feedback is mandatory. It's compulsory to provide feedback. Listen with empathy and try to see the speaker's viewpoint. We should not listen with any biased nature. Rather, we should listen with empathy and we should try to see the speaker's viewpoint. we should try to find out what is speaker's viewpoint. Anticipate, summarize, weigh the evidence, and look between the lines. It is better to anticipate in the dialogue by listening carefully, then summarize it, then weigh the evidence. That means to check the evidence and look between the lines. Look what really is there in between the lines. So these are the tips which can improve our listening, which can make us effective listeners. Now comes the topic, another one, and the subtopic, significance of listening. So see, listening, it plays a significant role in regular communication and academic success. Students get succeed in exchanging the communication skills if they can understand the listening skills. Students can have a good academic career. They can learn more communication skills. They can be good at communication skills if they first know what listening is. See, let's see what is the significance. It enhances our understanding. It makes our communication effective. It builds relationships. It's good for learning and growth. It's good for conflict resolution. It makes our professional success, gives us professional success. It's valued for academic achievement, and it gives us empathy and emotional intelligence. These are the points which are essential for listening. Let's check what it means. It enhances our understanding. See, listening skills are fundamental to understanding others. Listening skills, they are fundamental to understand others. We cannot understand others and their perspective. You cannot better understand me. You cannot understand my viewpoint if you do not listen me carefully. When you listen to me, you understand. There are chances you may understand. And you will definitely understand. Then, they are essential for understanding others, gathering information, building meaningful connections. So, these listening skills are important to understand others. We can gather more information when we listen to others. We can build meaningful connections when we listen to others. So listening skill involve actively receiving, interpreting, responding to verbal and non-verbal messages. This I told you what listening is. Then effective communication. Good listening skills are vital, are important to communication. Every communication skill is incomplete without listening, as I told you. See, but when we listen attentively, we can accurately interpret the intended message, including verbal cues, tone of voice, non-verbal signals. So when we listen carefully, we will be able to understand the intended message. We will be able to decode the verbal cues, non-verbal signals. And this helps us respond approximately. Then only we respond. Then only we ask questions for clarifications. And then only we try to avoid mistakes when we listen carefully. So listening, it promotes clear and meaningful communication. We can say that listening makes us able for effective communication. Effective communication cannot be attained when we do not have this listening skill. If we do not know the listening skill, if we do not have listening skill, we can never attain effective communication. Then, building relationship. Listening is a key component of building and maintaining strong relationships. See, when we genuinely listen to others, when we pay attention to others, when we give our ear to others, so we convey to them that we respect you, we validate your point, we have an interest for you, and we value you. When we make someone feel that you are most welcome, when we make someone feel that I have an interest with you, when we make someone feel I respect you, obviously these people, we will be building strong relationship with the people. When we listen people carefully, we make them feel you are more special to us. And when we make them feel you are more special to us, obviously we are building our relationship with them. And we know to build a relationship with people is much necessary because man is a social animal. We cannot live a secluded life. We cannot live in lonely. We cannot be a forlorn person. So it's always better to be in the company of others. Then conflict resolution. So see, conflict is an inevitable part of life, whether in workplace or within a community or within your home. At your home, conflicts arise. Wherever there are humans, conflicts may arise. When people feel heard and understood, they are more likely to be open to find common grounds and reaching compromises. See, when people feel, yeah, they are heard, they are understood, there are chances that we can reach to a conclusion. We can reach to a compromise. So whenever we are having these conflicts, so if we listen to each other carefully, there are chances we can find some compromises for our conflicts. So I can say, or we can say, listening skill leads us to compromises, and compromise lets us to live a good life. Then learning and growth. Listening promotes learning and growth. So see, listening is not limited to interpersonal communication only. It's essential for personal growth and learning. So whether it is in some educational context or during a workshop or in everyday life, when we listen to people, we learn. And when we learn, we grow. Learning, there is growth in the learning. See, in educational settings, students who take active part to listen lectures and engage in discussions are more likely to retain their information and excel in academics. Students who are taking active part in classes, who listen carefully, there are chances they can retain the information, and once you retain the information, you can excel in your academics. That means you learn something. You can retain the information for your future life, for your future preferences. And in the workplace, now employees who listen to the feedback and take it constructively, they are better equipped to develop their skills and advance their careers. So there is growth. When you listen to the feedback of others, when you listen carefully, so you improve yourself. When you improve yourself, that's growth. So listening, it takes us to the growth. And there is also professional success is there. When we listen to our boss, when we listen to all the policies, when we pay attention to all the policies of the department, we will have a professional growth. Academic achievement, I talked there is, and we can build empathy with each other and emotional intelligence when we are good at listening. There are some fallacies about listening. That is, number one is listening is not my problem. There are people who speak like, oh, listening is not my problem. I can easily listen. So it's not that case. It is a skill to be learned. Listening and hearing are the same. I showed you how listening and hearing are different. Good readers are good listeners. No, this is not possible. Every good reader may be a good listener? Not at all. Smarter people are better listeners. Again, there is nothing like smarter people are good listeners. No. Listening improves with age. This is also false. Listening skills are very difficult to learn. This is another false point, that listening skills are like difficult to learn. No listening skill is difficult to learn. We can learn it easily with more practice. So here I would like to stop. I hope you all have understood this well. Today I talked about listening. I gave you some definitions of listening. Then I talked about the importance. Then I talked about listening as a language skill. Then I talked about some important points. Then I talked about some tips which one should be careful and one should take in mind in order to be a good listener. Then I talked about significance of listening, which is the main topic of today's discussion. I hope you all have understood well. So I would like to take by here. Thank you. Thank you for listening. Be careful. Thank you.
Like, share, and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.